Today is the big day. It's the annual meeting for 2024. Will there be new light at the Stanley Theater today? Only time will tell.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, it looks like it's that time of the year again. The annual meeting 2024. Whoever thought we would still be on this side of paradise? You see, this past week, for any of the Bethelites who are assigned to the United States branch, this week is probably one of two of the most exciting times a Bethelite can be at Bethel. And the annual meeting is kind of an interesting meeting. Now, when I was at Bethel, and for so many of you who are watching this video, you probably remember so well how every year in the Watchtower, you will see this little announcement down in the corner. Nothing spectacular, nothing big. It would just simply say annual meeting, first Saturday of the month. And it had really no meaning or significance whatsoever. See, the week leading up to the annual meeting at Bethel, it is nothing but a buzz around there. The reason why is because all three airports have planes flying in from all over the world. People who represent the who's who of Jehovah's Witnesses. We're talking about all the major players. All the voting members are coming into town. We're talking about zone overseers. We're talking about branch overseers. Those who've been circuit and district overseers. Longtime faithful publishers and pioneers. All these individuals who are voting members who've been handpicked by the governing body themselves. Loyal men, loyal, faithful men who would never do anything in terms of voting for the wrong person because they would lose their voting rights. But you know, it's interesting because for Bethelites, I know myself, it was an exciting week because it meant also getting speakers, lining up speakers to come out to your congregation and give a talk. Over the years, the tickets to get into the annual meeting had become like NFL Super Bowl tickets for Jehovah's Witnesses. You see, when I was at Bethel, you could get tickets and you could also invite people. And sometimes you could wait to almost to the last minute and there'd still be tickets available, but not anymore. You see, there are only three ways you can attend the annual meeting. One, you have to be a voting member. You automatically get in. Two, a Bethelite who gets his tickets early. Or three, you're invited by someone who can get tickets, such as a Bethelite. So then you become the guest of honor. In my local congregation, there was one of the elders on the body. He was also a former Bethelite and a voting member as well. That's the story for another day, though. But each year, the local friends, they would wait with bated breath to see who he's going to tap, which two people will be blessed to go along with him and his wife when they go to the annual meeting so that they too can mingle with the bigwigs, the heavy hitters in the organization. And these friends would come back with pictures and, this is brother so-and-so, he runs the branch over in South Africa. This is brother so-and-so, he runs the branch over in Switzerland. And so this is what they would do when they come back. And it was just amazing. But this is what makes this organization so interesting. We say we're not interested in titles and positions and status. Go to the annual meeting. You will see a display of status that you have never seen before because you realize all these guys sitting around here, these are major players. As we used to say at Bethel, these are the local heavies and the Bethel heavies. So for the Bethelite, if you wanted to go, you could go. I went. But you realize that you got to take a Saturday off. And Bethelites don't like taking Saturdays off. So for many Bethelites, they simply say, we'll just wait and get the notes that we can use for our talks and share with the friends once someone types them up. And so over the years, the tickets for the annual meeting have literally changed from just regular tickets to now they're like Super Bowl tickets. And the reason why is because the new governing body has made a decision that they're going to use the annual meeting as a launching pad to launch new light, new teachings from God. That's what they're doing now. And so it really it's kind of interesting because what it does, you get some of the friends who will hear about it and others who won't for a while until it comes out in the magazine or when people go back home and say, well, they said the annual meeting so and so and so. And so this is what the annual meeting has become now. It's become a testing ground for new light. New light from Jehovah. So we're going to see what happens. Will there be any new announcements this year? Don't know. Nobody really knows. But we do know one thing is for sure, and this is a fact that we all know. The Watchtower has some teachings that are not aging well. These teachings are not aging well, and they're not getting the results, and they're not getting the type of enthusiasm that Jehovah's Witnesses have had over the years. So will the governing body use this as an occasion to try to rev up the old engine? Probably so, but we'll see. I know personally I invite you to share with us what changes or what doctrines do you think these guys might decide to come up with this year. I know that when we look at some of the doctrines that are not aging well, they're going to have to change some things. There's just no question. Whether they change it at the annual meeting or they change it through Watchtower study or an announcement, they're going to have to change it because the legs on so many of the things that they've taught are about to fall off. The wheels are about to fall off. One of the teachings that I think about the most, one of the biggest issues the Watchtower is dealing with, as we all know, is their legal issues. These guys are going to have to do something with the judicial stuff. Around the world, it's becoming an issue in terms of being a human rights issue. It's going to be interesting how they move themselves away from dealing with and being responsible for judicial action. This is going to be very interesting. It's possible they can do that. We know they've done it in the past. They took blood from a disfellowshipping to now so disassociation. So the elders don't have to take any actions. Elders can't be blamed for anything. Well, we didn't tell sister so-and-so she'd be disfellowship. She made that decision on her own. And I believe that a lot more items will move from disfellowshipping, which is an active process on the part of the Watchtower and its elders and representatives, to more of an inactive or passive active, such as disassociation. They'll just give out a list of all of these things here. You're disassociated if they read your name off. And this will keep the elders from having to, quote unquote, hopefully get legally bound up. We've already seen the circuit overseers are now the fall guy. They're using the circuit overseers as their firewall. The firewall to stop legal action. Well, we didn't know who this man was that he appointed. We don't even know him. This circuit overseer recommended him. And so they're trying to set themselves up, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think the judicial issues are going to be something that they are going to have to address, either at the annual meeting or through a magazine or through letters to the elders. They've got to come up with some type of new light as to how to handle the judicial process. We've always been taught this is how it was done in the first century. Well, first century brothers weren't paying millions and millions of dollars for lawsuits because of bad handled judicial cases, but the Watchtower does. And we've seen how they've tried to soften it. I think the process of continuing to separate the Watchtower or trying to separate themselves from the rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses, I think we're going to continue to see that. They don't call them members anymore. They're individuals. We didn't tell the brothers what to do. It's up to them. I remember a time, if you look at some of the older publications, where the Watchtower would take strong stands. Jehovah's Witnesses do not vote. Now the Watchtower doesn't say that. That's each individual. It's a personal decision. They have to make it decide for themselves. But one time the witnesses took a very powerful position. The same position that many of us as kids took in school. None of us would think of telling the elders, well, did you salute the flag, brother? Well, I thought it was a personal decision, Brother Davis. That's why I saluted the flag. It was a personal decision. No child, none of us as kids would have ever tried to get out by saying it's a personal decision. No. We were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't vote. We don't vote for the student council. We don't salute the flag. But now the Watchtower realizes they move around the world in 200 countries. You just can't come in and tell citizens don't vote like they did years ago. So this whole judicial process, I think, is we're going to continue to see that they will tweak it, try to polish it up, try to buff it so that it will pass legal muster, as they say. But we know the real deal. At the end of the day, the governing body calls all the shots. I think this issue with the overlapping generation, it too is not aging well. Because basically what the Watchtower is teaching is, before we all were taught and we all sincerely believed that the generation of 1914 would not die out. Now the Watchtower basically teaches the generation are people who know somebody who was back there in 1914. And eventually we can see these guys being crazy enough to actually come out and say, well, there's somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. That's the type of ridiculous teachings in New Light that the Watchtower can cook up. And what's so interesting about it, we know, and the Watchtower knows, the governing body knows that they can pretty much come out with anything they want to. I mean, they monitor it very well. You have 8 million people, and they look, when we come out with something that's ridiculous and something that's crazy, they see what happens. First, they know that witnesses can't say anything. So if anyone who don't like it, don't agree with it, they know they're not going to be running their mouth. So secondly, they know that very few people are going to leave. And we know that now the direction of the organization with literally dumbing down the message. I mean, when we were witnesses, when I was a witness, at least it gave the appearance of well thought out scholarly work. Now it's run, spot, run. Jane got the ball. Right now they have Jehovah's Witnesses going back with 20, 30, 40 years of being a Jehovah's Witness, studying children's books. That is so insulting. It is just, I mean, that's got to be insulting to your intelligence. And yet the Jehovah's Witnesses will sit there and pretend this is such good information. Your 5-year-old child can answer this. Here you are with 35 years as a regular pioneer, and they've taken you back to this. Take, for example, the literature. Not only are they dumbing down the quality of the material, but look what they're doing. They're releasing just a handful of magazines every year. You see, whether they print the magazines is irrelevant. They're online now. The articles that they're writing, they're repeating the same thing over and over. This is because the writing department is not putting out anything. Ever since Fred Franz passed, the Watchtower has not had anyone that they could consider their local on-staff scholar. And you can see it in the publications. They are just not well put together. They're not well thought out. They contradict each other. You have a governing body member who will say something this week. A couple of months later, another governing body comes back and says something else. The inconsistency, the confusion, it is absolutely amazing. Do not forsake the gathering of one another. Oh my goodness. Meeting attendance. If there was one thing that was beat into our head, and that was you had to be at the Kingdom Hall, don't matter what it was. Rain, snow, sleet, you better be at your meetings. Well, the Watchtower has an interesting situation because now Kingdom Halls are empty. They came out with that process. They made that big old announcement. Tony Griffin gave the talk on the consolidation of the Kingdom Halls and everything. And it gave the impression, we're going to be putting these Kingdom Halls, these congregations together. And now, even though they have merged congregations all over, now those Kingdom Halls are starting to come up empty. You see, with Zoom, people are staying home. It's really amazing. I was talking to someone a while back, and he says, when we first started with Zoom, we were expected to have our cameras on. We was expected to be sitting there dressed up, suit and tie, women with dresses and stockings, paying rapt attention, reminding you of the Simpsons all sitting on that sofa at the beginning of the show. But you know what? Today, people got the cameras off. People got their flip-flops on. They got their short pants on. They're just chilling. The organization is not going to be able to get the witnesses to go back to the Kingdom Hall. The same thing with field service. Field service is a done deal. Is it not amazing that as witnesses, we were taught and so sincerely believed that the work was going to be speeding up, more activity? Is it not amazing that they're actually cutting back on the activities? This is the organization that we're looking at. And now the annual meeting is their only opportunity to shine. We're announcing, can you imagine which governing body as they jostle over who will be reading the New Light? That particular scripture in Proverbs is probably one of the most quoted scriptures by Jehovah's Witnesses. New light, new light, new light. And it's not new light. In some cases, it's repeat light, old light, refurbished light. I asked a witness once. He was saying, we're not embarrassed to change our teachings when we realize they're wrong. But you see, that makes the assumption that the new teaching is now right. It's just like with the overlapping generation. They dropped the old teaching on the generation, but the new teaching they picked up is no more correct than the last one. But this is the organization that we see. This has been JT, and thanks for being in our audience. We was hoping to get this video out earlier this week, but this has been a busy week. In fact, Share your comments below on what you think the Watchtower will do at the annual meeting this weekend. And please be on the lookout for our next video, which will also cover the changes, because we know they're going to probably be coming, that were made at the annual meeting. All right, take care of yourselves.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.